Hello, thanks for being in a new video. This time I have review of this smartwatch called Haylou RS5. Let's get started. This smartwatch is probably one of the most economical options you will find in the market. I've been testing it for several days and I must tell you that it offers very good options at a very tight price. I think it is a very good alternative, although obviously let me describe it in full for you to decide if it is what you need or not yet. The price right now on AliExpress is 727 pesos, about $41. Although you know that the price can go varying a lot, and remember that the prices here are not the same as over there. But I'm totally sure it's a super attractive smartwatch for its price. So join me to know it completely. In the description, I leave you the link in case you want to buy it. Let's start by taking a look at the design, because obviously the most attractive thing will be the size of the screen. I'll tell you all about the screen in a moment, but physically it will be an attractive watch. It has a rectangular screen format with rounded corners, although with a proportion close to being a full square. In this case, the glass doesn't promise us any special protection or anything, and the back cover is made of plastic. Obviously, we are talking about a budget watch, so we could not demand much more from it. In this case, in addition, it includes a button, but it's not just a button. It will also be a digital crown that, as you can see on the main screen, will also help us to change the dial. You should know that the digital crown does not offer an optical response with a vibration motor or something like that, but you can feel the change between each step. In fact, you can hear it too. So the simple fact of having a digital crown in this price range seems super attractive to me, because you can get to interact with the watch in a good way, not just by touching the screen. The thickness of this watch is 10.5 millimeters. It has a weight of 51 grams. The crystal is 2.5D. That is to say, it has a very slight curve on the edges to give it a much more modern touch. The case of this watch is made of aluminum with an alloy and offers two types of band included in the box. This one, which is made of fabric, which is very pleasant to the touch and sight and offers an adjustment through Velcro, which really comes in handy because it is very comfortable and very fast to use. It also includes the silicone band, so it's up to you as a user what you prefer, and it comes with a traditional clasp. As you already noticed, on this back you can interchange the bands, although the size doesn't seem to be standard. It is available in both this black color edition and a silver color edition, for you to choose which one you like best. And as for water resistance, it's IP68 certified. It should hold up well enough. Just remember that that resistance wears off over time on all devices. So either way, it would be worth not getting the watch so wet, or at least rinsing it with pure water if you do get it wet with foreign water. In this case, it does not include a water mode to prevent accidental touches on the screen, so I insist that it would be best not to get it too wet. Let's talk about the screen, which is spectacular. We are talking about a 2.01-inch AMOLED panel, one of the largest you will find in its category. It can easily be its strongest point, as it offers us an intense color, and it also has a brightness of 1000 nits, so you can appreciate the content perfectly outdoors. The detail here is that it does not have automatic brightness, but you can modify the brightness manually, and I insist in that the maximum brightness is really very high. You will be able to use and visualize it very comfortably outdoors. So it's super good in that regard. It also has a resolution of 410 by 502 pixels, so it gives us a pixel density of over 300 pixels per inch. To be exact, it is 322, so definitely the viewing experience is the most advanced you will find in a device of this price. It is also going to offer us the always-on display function, as you can see, although obviously to save battery it will not have as much brightness as when you have the screen fully activated, and in this case the always-on cover does not correspond to the cover that you have activated with the watch on. In the settings, you can go in to configure one of the two always-on display dials available. There are only two options, but fortunately, it does have this option to give you a quick glance at the time without the need to turn the wrist. Although, obviously, it also supports the gesture to activate the screen when you turn the wrist. The only gesture that is not supported is to cover the screen to turn it off. That could be something to improve, although in a watch of this price, sincerely, we could not demand it. Obviously, if you don't want to have the gesture of turning the screen on when you turn the device, you could turn it off. It's up to you as a user. By default, it comes turned off. Now let me tell you about the sound. Because curiously and surprisingly, this watch does integrate speaker and also integrates microphone. Something very unusual in watches of this price, so it can also become a strong point. This watch will offer you access to control the music on your smartphone, although it cannot store music locally, but it does give you the necessary controls, both playback and volume, so I think the experience will also be good in this regard. Through the microphone, it is also supposed to be able to connect to your cell phone to call the voice assistant, although I must be honest in this case, and it doesn't seem to be working properly. On another occasion that I tried it, it did allow me to talk, but the response is quite slow since it only activates the assistant of your cell phone. It is not an assistant that works locally, so the operation could vary depending on which cell phone it is connected to. I do not consider it a very attractive feature of this watch, but what is very attractive is that through the speaker and microphone you can answer calls. As you can see, the screen appears when they are calling you and gives you the option to hang up, answer, or even reply with a message, which would come in handy if you can't answer at that moment. But let's answer, so you can see that it even has the option to change the volume or mute your microphone. Let's try to talk. Can you hear me well? The maximum volume of the watch is barely enough to listen, but it can be useful if you leave your cell phone at home and you are doing something else. When they call you, you can perfectly answer from the watch, although to answer outdoors it will not be so useful because the volume is not very high. But honestly, for this price, there is no other watch that offers you these capabilities. Even if you call you by WhatsApp, note that it is also compatible with this screen and you could get to answer. Hello, can you hear me? Perfect. Then the truth is that it is interesting because it is also compatible with WhatsApp and it also has the phone app, so you can log in and you can have your recent contacts. So not only can you answer calls, but you can also initiate calls from this same watch. You can also view your call log or specifically dial a number. Now let's move on to talk about health monitoring, and for that you obviously have several apps. The first one is daily activity, where you can see a summary of your approximate calories burned in the day, the distance you've traveled, and the steps you've taken. So you really have a good monitoring and also a good visualization of all this information directly from the watch. You can navigate both with your finger on the screen and also with the digital crown, so definitely that also the interface comes very well adapted. And in addition to the traditional count, you have the heart rate reader at all times, although it does not have notification of high pace or low pace, but you can see all the history of the measurement it has taken. So it seems to me also a very good tool. In this case, it is also capable of measuring stress, although the text is wrong because it has a translation that says pressure, but do not be confused because it is not capable of measuring blood pressure, but only stress. So here it can also give you more or less a summary of how your stress is throughout the day, and it can also measure the oxygen in the blood all the time, which comes in very handy because you don't need to manually come in and set that you want to start a monitoring. In the same way, it can monitor sleep without the need for you to tell it that you've already gone to sleep. So it's very good in that sense, and it can measure the different stages of sleep. So I honestly think it's spectacular in the monitoring that it does for this price range. In fact, it also has a respiration rate measurement, although that one you have to start manually, and it can also measure mood, which is quite strange. I don't know if it's useful for the watch to tell you whether you're at peace or you're very happy. I think that's something you can know more accurately yourself. In fact, it also integrates breathing exercises in case you feel very stressed or very fatigued. You can start them to help you in that aspect. And of course, it also includes a tool to keep track of female health regarding the beginning of the period or the end. But obviously, all this is manual. It doesn't include some sensor to help you predict cycles or something like that. But at this price, we can't demand something more advanced from it. And with respect to exercise monitoring, it has 150 sports modes, so you can choose the one that best suits your needs. And note that when you start an exercise, it will give us a countdown, and with a graph, it will show us our heart rate zone to know if we are already burning calories or not yet, which comes in handy. It also comes with a stopwatch and an approximate number of calories burned. We can also access our music player quickly from the same screen of the exercise, and we can pause it or end it definitively. What we cannot do is leave this application to go to another, but that would only ask more advanced watches. Honestly, at this price, it seems to me a very good exercise monitoring screen. Obviously, it is not going to include GPS as more advanced watches, so in this case we have a measurement, let's say simple but totally useful, with the necessary information of your calories burned and more. This watch also does not offer an automatic detection of the exercises, so as soon as you go to do an exercise, you must start it if you want to have a very accurate measurement. And finally, with respect to other sensors, it is not going to offer us compass, but at this price we could not get demanding in that aspect, nor does it have an altitude sensor or pressure sensor or anything like that, but I insist that at this price it perfectly meets a sports monitoring. Now let's talk about the battery, which is always an issue that can be variable depending on each user. In my case, I have honestly done very well. The manufacturer promises 9 days of use without always on display, and with always on display on, the manufacturer promises 3 days of use. However, in my case, this is my 4th day of use with always on display enabled, and I still have 49% battery. So honestly, that's a very strong point, because usually when you use always on display, the battery is dramatically reduced, but in this case it's not. Although I already told you that the always on display is something simple and with the brightness very low, but honestly it comes very well because it does not affect the battery too much. So the battery did please me a lot. It's definitely not a watch that you're going to have to charge every day. I think you're going to charge it every week. Although speaking of charging, it doesn't have a quick charge system in the first few minutes, so it's charging 1% for every minute. For example, in my test, in 15 minutes it recovered 15% of energy. In 30 minutes it recovered 30% of energy, although the full charge was finished in 1 hour and 38 minutes. But it's not bad at all. As I tell you, I think the battery performs very well, so it doesn't bother that it doesn't charge that fast. But honestly, I've also seen other watches or bracelets in this price range that take longer to charge, so I like the experience in this aspect as well. In fact, it also includes a power saving mode with which the manufacturer offers up to 20 days of autonomy. Obviously, it's going to disable some things and sensors, but it's up to you as a user what you're going to have enabled. Honestly, I think this is also a strong point of this watch. Now let's take a look at the software of this watch, which, as you saw throughout the video, looks well designed. In this case, the only thing to note is that it doesn't offer us transitions when switching screens. Let's say that the animations are quite limited. This is in order to save battery life. On the main screen, we can switch between watch faces by sliding the digital crown, unlike other watches where you have to press and hold on the screen. Although you can also press and hold on the screen and you can access each of these watch faces. So we have a good level of customization. If we slide from left to right, we will access a kind of quick information panel that curiously shows us the time. Although on the main screen we already have the time, but also shows us the day we are, the weather forecast, and direct access to recent applications that we have opened. Finally, if we slide from right to left, we will access quick information widgets that in fact we can also explore vertically. So believe me, it is very valuable to have all this access to information very quickly. I like the way the system of this watch is designed. I just wish it also followed the carousel scroll, because notice how going back to the main screen, if we want to go back to the last screen, it's not possible. So you have to navigate quickly to the last screen, but if you scroll too far and you go too far, you're going to have to repeat the whole process. So only that I would like, maybe with some update, but honestly it's very good, and it even gives us even more panels that we can add on our screen, like phone, exercise, music, and respiration rate. Then we have a good navigation, and if we slide from the top down, we quickly access some settings. For example, here we can enable whether or not we want to receive calls on the watch. We also have this second button that is going to allow us to change the style in which the applications are displayed. Notice how we could have a view also very similar to what we see in advanced watches with all the circles on the main screen, or we can switch to a simple grid mode, or finally to the list mode, which is the default. Then we also have the button for Do Not Disturb mode, which can be enabled all day, or you can program it at specific times. You can also prevent the watch from vibrating at certain times, and the brightness control is also available here, as well as the control to enable the display when you turn your wrist. Then you have a button to find your phone by making it ring, and it works properly. It also has a flashlight button, although it turns on immediately. I wish it had a countdown to avoid being dazzled at some point, and it doesn't have flashlight brightness intensity control, nor does it include other modes, just on and off. And then we are going to find the power saving mode, which, as you will notice, will disable the vibration, wake up gesture and notification, plus the brightness will be reduced. Then we find the shortcut to the general settings, which is basically the same as we were already seeing throughout the video. Finally, sliding from the bottom up, we access the notifications. Although note how in this case the management of notifications does not seem to me the most appropriate, because when you are receiving many messages, simply tells you WhatsApp, 8 messages, WhatsApp, 7 messages, WhatsApp, 6 messages, and at some point, yes, you can get to read the messages you have received, but they are a bit messy, so it is not the best of experiences with respect to the grouping of notifications, and it can become a bit complex that you are reading specifically the message you received recently. In fact, when you have a lot of messages accumulated, if you receive a message, the watch will be constantly vibrating and notifying you of all the messages that you had accumulated. So really, the notification experience doesn't seem to me to be the most pleasant. In fact, sometimes you also get the traditional notification checking for new messages, and that can be annoying. And in the evenings, you might also get annoyed that you get the notification when WhatsApp is backing up your messages. And it's a constant vibration because it notifies you when it's at 1%, it notifies you when it's at 2%, and so on. So I insist, it can get to be very annoying in that aspect. And when you get a notification, you can read the message, but you can't respond. It only brings predefined messages when you hang up a call, but not for notifications. And in the case of emojis, they cannot be displayed either, just a rectangle will appear, and much less you can display stickers. So the notification management is basic. I do not consider it to be something attractive of this watch. And as part of the other functions of this watch, we will finally find access to the weather forecast. You can also set alarms directly on the watch, although obviously they will not be synchronized with those of the cell phone. We will also find the possibility of accessing emergency message functions. And as additional tools, we have access to the stopwatch, the timer, and something important is that it also works as a camera shutter, which is very uncommon in watches of this price. Although in this case, note that it will work exclusively in conjunction with its own application. It doesn't work in conjunction with your cell phone's native camera app, so you can't take advantage of all the options that your phone might have included. You are a bit limited in that aspect, but honestly, almost no watch in this price range includes this option. Photos will not be saved in the main camera album, so if you can't find them, go here. Again, it could perhaps offer us a nicer experience, but in this price range, it is surprising to have this tool to take remote pictures. Finally, it also offers us access to the calculator, and that will be basically all we have regarding this watch. Obviously, in its mobile application, it can show us the status of the watch's battery and the statistics it is collecting much more clearly. We can also access a complete history. In sleep, we see a rating and even recommendations in some areas. We're also going to find the step count and all the full stats. Although here is also a not accurate translation because it is not pressure but stress that is able to measure, but it seems to me also a well-designed application so you can see absolutely all the statistics. Regarding women's health, as I indicated, everything will be manual. Here you simply set how long your period lasts and how long the interval is before the other cycle starts, and finally you set the date of your last period so you can keep track of everything. And in conjunction with the cell phone, you could plot your routes, as it will take advantage of the cell phone's GPS in case you need it. And finally, we will be able to see all the watch settings. From this screen, we can access the full gallery of watch faces that honestly is not as extensive as in other cases, but I think they have a good design. Most other watches I have tested in this price range have a bit ugly dials, and it is difficult to find a well-designed one, but in this case I feel that although the catalog is not as extensive, we will find most of them with a fairly nice design. In this case, each cover is going to have a little more information, but it is not able to have the so-called complications in this cover that can give you quick access or more advanced information of other things. But honestly, I do like the design of each of these covers that, as you see, have a catalog extensive enough to find one that you like. They are also divided by categories in case you want to explore them more easily, and obviously from the application you can also configure how it is monitoring your health status, and also gives you some guidelines to prevent the application from suspending. This is very important because if the application is suspended, you will stop receiving notifications, but it can vary greatly depending on each cell phone. Ideally, you should go to the battery settings and indicate that you want this application to continue running in the background. You can also configure the notifications and which applications will be sending you these messages. And finally, you can also enable the option to receive calls via Bluetooth, give permissions for synchronization of the weather forecast. You can also notify you every 60 minutes if you have not moved, so you have a little more movement in your day. And you can also have the option to search for the clock in case you cannot find it. Finally, there is also the quick response when you reject calls, so you can edit those responses, and that's basically it for the moment, although you know it could also receive a software update, so some features could be improved or modified over time. And with that, we come to the end of this video. I hope you liked it. If you did, you know you can tell us, and we'll see you next time.